Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another Supatease video. We've got another big 10.1.5 class change update, and it looks like this is the one that finally Death Knights are going to be getting some attention. I'm starting on the Death Knight section of it. Otherwise, you guys might have been typing already in the comments like every other video about what Death Knights question mark. Where are the Death Knight changes? Well, they're here right now, and I've put them at the front of this video. I've skipped past every other class to make sure that we can talk about what's going on with Death Knights first before we get to everything else, and everything else is just as bonkers. So if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with changes related to the game like this, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is also greatly appreciated on my long-term goal of getting to 100,000 subscribers. Let's get started. Death Knight, first change up on the chopping block. Abomination limb damage is now reduced by 50% in PvP combat. I did in fact read reduced by 50%. This had better be compensated with something else into the future. Maybe this means that they want something entirely different for Death Knight. Empower rune weapons haste bonus is now 33% effective in PvP combat. Another nerf targeting your cooldown gameplay. However, this is, the window of time where Death Knight is the most relevant. So hopefully this means that they're going to be heavily compensating your damage outside of this window so that you're going to be a lot more competitively viable. Developers notes, we're making updates to Frost Death Knights in PvP with the goals of rewarding the spec for uptime by increasing its overall sustained damage and lowering its reliance on cooldowns. The base strength increase from Pillar of Frost is now 40% effective in PvP combat, was previously 60. The stacking strength bonus from Pillar of Frost is now 50% effective in PvP combat. Please tell me the good stuff comes soon, because this is a lot of bad stuff. The mastery increase from Frostwhelp's aid is now 50% effective in PvP combat. The frost damage increase from Bone Grinder is now 50% in PvP combat. The Frost Strike damage increase from Shattering Blade is now 50% effective in PvP combat. Hello. The Remorseless Winter damage increase from Gathering Storm is now 50% effective in PvP combat. And the Remorseless Winter damage increase from Everfrost is now 50% effective in PvP combat. And the Strength increase from Enduring Strength is now 80% effective in PvP combat. To compensate all of that, Frost Strike damage is going to be increased by 45% PvP up from 30, and Obliterate damage is going to be increased by 20% up from 8. And Obliterate damage is now increased by an additional 60% when Killing Machine is not active in PvP combat. Remorseless Winter damage has been increased by 80% in PvP combat. Howling Blast damage has been increased by 30% in PvP combat. And Frost Scythe damage has been increased by 50% in PvP combat. Glacial Advance damage has been increased by 50% in PvP combat. So targeting some talents that Frost has nothing else to tell me. I'm pretty sure you're not playing Frost Scythe, right? I don't even think you're playing Glacial Advance. So targeting some talents and abilities that I think previously otherwise you weren't using, and a heavy nerf to your cooldown stacking window, which is, the necessary evil to get you in a more viable position like other melee DPS where you're feeling, decently strong throughout the whole game rather than running around a pillar waiting for Power Rune Weapon and Abomination Limb to be able to land your kills. So hopefully these numbers are enough, because this is a lot of 50% reduced versus, not so much 50% increase. We'll have to wait and see. But I think this is a good direction overall. It's just a matter of the numbers actually hitting the right place. For Unholy Death Knights, developers notes, we are making updates to Unholy Death Knights in PvP with the goals of a damage profile that comes from active gameplay and the spec being less reliant on cooldowns. We're also making some quality of life improvements by removing the PvP reduction of Virulent Plague, increasing pet survivability, and addressing Raise Abomination being a mandatory PvP talent. Raise Abomination has been removed. Okay, what's the good news? Army of the Dead is now usable in arenas and rated battlegrounds. Army of the Dead is now summoning 4 ghouls instead of 8 in PvP combat. Apocalypse now summons up to 2 Army of the Dead ghouls instead of 4 in PvP combat. Army of the Dead ghoul damage is now increased by 20% in PvP combat. So you're going to lose Raise Abomination, but your Army of the Dead that's replacing is going to do more. Ruptured Viscera's Festering Wound application chance and explosion damage is increased by 100% in PvP combat. Dark Transformation's damage increases the Death Knight's primary pet is now 50% effective in PvP combat. It's a nerf to Dark Transformation. Virulent Plague's duration is no longer reduced by 45% in PvP combat. Festering Wound damage is increased by 310% in PvP combat. Death coil damage is increased by 125% in PP combat from 18%, and Scourge Strike damage is increased by 30% PP combat. Clawing Shadows damage increased by 30% PP combat, and Reaping is now 67% effective in PP combat. Reanimation now deals 10% of enemies' maximum health, down from 15%. So overall, targeting the basic abilities, I would have really liked to have seen some sort of return to the old school necrotic strike that was actually really threatening. Let Death Knight get too many of those and you just can't heal through the absorption effect. I felt like that was a really unique flavor to the specialization, and something that they just hadn't hit correctly, or at least to the same feel that it used to be in the past. I think this is a good direction overall. Again, numbers are everything, and this is a lot of them that I can't guarantee without actually trying. So if you have a Death Knight, you want to copy it to the PTR, definitely give these changes a go and give your feedback as to whether or not these numbers are going to be adequate or not. But this is the type of attention that I think Death Knights did need. For Druids, Disentanglement is now going to reduce the mana cost of Efflorescence by 25%. That's definitely going to make the talent more viable. This is putting the mushroom on the ground for the snare removal. For Preservation Evokers, Life Giver's Flame Healing has been increased by 15% in PP combat. For Mistweaver, Ancient Teachings now heals for 245% more in PP combat, up from 220. Bit odd to see buffs for Mistweaver. For Holy Paladins, Denounce damage has been reduced by 15%, and Glimmer of Light damage reduced by 60%, up from 50. For Discipline Priest, Atonement is now 67% more effective in PvP combat, up from 50, so a buff to Disc. And for Affliction, PvP-specific changes, Rot and Decay now also extends the duration of damage over time effects by 1 second when Oblivion deals damage. And Oblivion is the new Death Bolt kind of Void Torrent-ish type of ability. So a lot of focus PvP right now for Death Knights in this patch. We have a whole bunch of other changes that we got to cover here that are going to affect likely the game as a whole here, but I wanted to make sure that we looked at those ones first. Here they're talking about how they're going to be basically reducing the effectiveness of Primordial Stones, and they're going to be changing a bunch of things as a result of that, and some of that's going to affect PvP, so it's important for that. For Death Knights, ghouls summoned by Raised Dead now inherit 85% of the Death Knight's health, up from 50. Death Coil Healing increased by 75%, so interesting, maybe like Lichborn Death Coil Healing. I don't know how many Death Knights are actively healing their pets with Death Coil. I feel like pet survivability has not really been actually too big of an issue, at least in PvP. Blood Death Knights are getting an 8% damage buff. Vengeance getting a 4% increase for Vengeance Demon Hunter. For Druid, Rebirth is now going to cost 2% of your base mana, but the cost is unchanged for Guardian Druids in Bear form. For Boomkins, they're changing mana regeneration to 100% down from 150%. This is going to limit your healing. This is like the patch where they're changing the way a deep mana pool that doesn't regenerate as frequently. So as soon as you've allocated all your heals, you're probably not getting any more. This is going to be it felt more like a nerf. And this is being applied to Feral as well. Mana regeneration to 100%. Ferocious Bites damage is getting increased by 5%. Dire Fixation now causes your attacks to deal 8% increased damage to your fixated target, up from 5. Primal Claws has been removed. Dire Fixation is located in Primal Claw's previous location. Rampant Ferocity has been redesigned. Ferocious Bite also deals damage per combo point spent to all nearby enemies affected by your rip. Damage reduced beyond 5 targets. And Rampant Ferocity is now also affected by Mastery Razor Claws. So some buffs to Feral. Guardian Druid, 6% damage increase. For Resto Druids, 25% damage increase. Curious to see if this, Convoke play in 2 is probably going to get really strong off of this. I think it's really good that they're giving healers more damage, so you can feel like you can contribute more to the game offensively, especially in PvP. Fix an issue that caused Life Plume to cost more mana than intended when using the Undergrowth talent, so mana buffs as well to the Resto Druid. For Evoker, in this week's PTR update, the order of specializations has changed in the talent pane. This will be reverted to the next case. So just talent pane changes. New talent, Potent Mana. Source of Magic increases the target's healing and damage done by 3%. Potent Mana is located in Regenerative Magic's previous position in row 8 beneath Source of Magic. Regenerative Magic has been redesigned, now increases your leech. These are very minor. Regenerative Magic has moved to row 6 beneath Instinctive Arcana. Draconic Legacy has been reduced to 1 rank down from 2. 1 rank value is equal to the previous 2 ranks, which is 6% stamina. So this talent's going to be a little bit more accessible. Going to be a bit more tanky as an evoker. Draconic Legacy's position swapped with Inherent Resistance. And Blast Furnace has been reduced to a 1 rank from 2. 1 rank value equal to the previous 2, which was a value of 4 seconds. For Augmentation Evoker specifically, it seems like they're targeting Spatial Paradox and giving you some nerfs here. This previously it will now increase the range of healer spells by 100% as opposed to 40 yards. So if something has a short range, it's not going to be, drastically doubled. This one, had a lot of attention on it for PvP, but I don't know if it really would have had too much of an impact, to be honest. And this isn't even me being biased, but it is going to be weaker now. Mana regeneration changes for augmentation, as well as every other hybrid, in line with this, to 100% down from 150. Preservation, all spell and ability damage increased by 10%, but will not apply in PvP combat. These are the ones that we're trying to pay close attention to, is which ones are getting nipped that need to get nipped. And that one's getting nipped. Life Giver's Flame now heals for 35 to 70% of the damage. Was 40 to 80, so a little bit less healing on Life Giver's Flame. For Mage, Mass Barrier is now only going to cast on players instead of pets or summons. It's a really important fix, because otherwise it would be completely useless. For Frost Death Knight, remember, this class is looking really good in 10.1.5. So what's it getting now on top of the things that were already good? Fix an issue with Thermal Voids, Ice Lance extending Water Elemental longer than intended. Fix an issue with Thermal Voids, Glacial Spike not extending Water Elemental. Thermal Void extension with Glacial Spike reduced to 1 second down from 1.5. Coldest Snap no longer resets the cooldown of Blizzard. Ooh, that's a bit of a nerf here. That was a big combo you could get. Cone of Cold's cooldown, while Coldest Snap is talented, can no longer be reduced or reset by time manipulation, shifting power, or Cold Snap. There's getting too many combos here with this spell. Mastery, Icicles now also increases Ibon Bolt damage. The Mastery scaling for Frozen Orb, Blizzard, and Common Storm is now separate from the single target spell. Very interesting. Frozen Orb damage being reduced by 15%. Glacial Spike cast time increased by 0.25 seconds, and damage reduced by 20%. After the most recent changes to Glacial Spike scaling with Mastery, we're going to pull back on some of the most recent buffs to Glacial Spike's damage. Freezing Wind now grants Fingers of Frost every 3 seconds, up from 2. And fix an issue with Freezing Winds not properly staying on the player when multiple frozen orbs are cast. Ray of Frost damage increased by 15%. This ability is hitting really hard in PvP. You definitely want to be paying attention to it. Lonely Winter now increases the damage of Frostbolt, Ice Lance, and Flurry by 15% down from 25. So it looks like they're reining in the strength of Frost so far through these changes. Slick Ice swap positions in the tree with Thermal Void. Thermal Void swap positions in the tree with Slick Ice. And Cryopathy damage per stack reduced to 5%, was 8. Now a choice node with Splintering Ray. New talent, Splintering Ray. Ray of Frost deals 25% of its damage to 5 nearby enemies. Now a choice node with Cryopathy. AoE Ray of Frost. I mean, it might be good situationally, but I don't see that being a big deal in PP. Glacial Assault now increases damage enemies take from you by 6%. Was 2. So that's a bit of a buff, but it no longer stacks. Glacial Assault duration reduced to 6 seconds, was 10, and reduced to 1 rank, it was 2. Icy Veins Water Elemental no longer increases the damage enemies take from you, and instead increases the frost damage you deal. Icy Veins Frigid Exposure renamed to Frigid Empowerment. Frigid Empowerment increases the frost damage you deal by 3% up to 15%. For Brewmaster Monks, new talent, Press the Advantage. Your auto attacks reduce the cooldown on your brews by 0.5 seconds and block your target's cheat, dealing additional nature damage and causing them to take 1% increased damage from your ability for 10 seconds. Upon reaching 10 stacks, your next cast of Rising Sun Kick or Keg Smash consumes all stacks to strike again at 100% effectiveness. This bonus attack can trigger effects on behalf of Tiger Palm, replace Tiger Palm. So Brewmaster might actually be getting a lot more viable in PvP. Like, look at these changes. Bonus attacks from Press the Advantage trigger Chi Surge when talented, have a chance to summon Niao Zhao, the Black Ox, when Call to Arms is talented. Ability damage 7% damage buff. Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick 20% damage buff. Tiger Palm invoke Niao Zhao, the Black Ox damage increased by 50%. Yeah, Brewmaster might be seeing a resurgence in PvP. For Mistweaver Monk, all spells and ability damage increased by 10%, but will not apply in PvP. Ancient Teachings now heals for 135% of the damage done, down from 150. So that Ancient Teachings change down to the bottom probably compensates for this. Font of Life now increases Essence Font healing by 25%. Previous was a static amount. Windwalkers, you're getting a 2% damage buff. Not too big of a deal, but better than nothing. For Holy, Commanding Light now increases the transfer of Beacon of Light by 10%. Was down from 20. Glimmer of Light damage increased by 850%, down from 1,000. And Holy Shock healing increased by 10%. It was previously reduced by 15%. Fading Light now absorbs an Absorb Shield. Now forms an Absorb Shield based off of 10% of the damage or healing dealt, was 20%, so some nerfs to Paladin. Veneration now heals for 180% of the damage done, down from 250. Avenging Crusader now activates for 8 seconds through Awakening. Shield of Righteous now reduces the cooldown of Crusader Strike by 1.5 seconds, down from 2. Daybreak has a new animation. Awakening can now only trigger in combat. Awakening stacking buff duration increased to 1 minute, was 30 seconds. And fix an issue that prevented Judgment from functioning with Fading Light. Fix an issue that caused Holy Shocks from Rising Sunlight to not cast if the target was over 40 yards away from the initial Holy Shock. All spells and ability damage increased by 10%. Avenging Crusader now deals 360% of the damage done, down from 400%. Intercession now costs 2% of base mana, up from 0. I think it's a battle res. Overflowing Light absorb duration is now 8 seconds up from 6. So some changes overall that seem difficult to rein in, whether or not it's an overall buff or nerf. Doesn't seem good overall to me. For prop paladin, Word of Glory is going to cost 10% base mana. This is going to be a big nerf to DPS paladins with Word of Glory costing mana. Mana regeneration increased by 100% down from 150. All ability damage increased by 4%. For retribution paladins, intercession and battle res is going to cost 2% of your mana now. Word of Glory, 10% of your base mana. Mana regeneration nerfed in line with the other hybrids to 100%. Hammer of Wrath now generates holy power when cast on immune targets. Fixed tooltip errors in jurisdiction. Fixed the tooltip issue with Crusade when applied by instrument of retribution. And you're getting a 2% damage buff as Rat Paladin. But I think this Word of Glory mana cost could be a big nerf because it means you're going to run out of gas eventually. That's the main strength for res. You don't run out of gas. For discipline, all spell and ability damage increased by 10%, but will not apply in PvP. Atonement now transfers 36% of all the damage up from or down from 40. So this is probably why they buffed Atonement down in the PvP changes. For Holy, all spell and ability damage increased by 10%. Nice little buff overall for Holy Priest here. Outlaw Rogue. What's going on for rogues here? This is not looking too good so far. We plan on compensating Outlaw Rogues for the Onyx Amulet adjustment, but we'd like to address Ghostly Strike affecting item damage at the same time. We expect this to be in a future 10.1.5 PTR build, so we have to wait and see what goes on with Outlaw. Subtlety, this is entirely unnecessary. 4% damage increase. Scary class. This class is going to be owning the tournament. Really scary class. Shaman, mana regeneration down to 100% from 150. That makes sense. Enhancement Shaman. There's a lot here for you. We want to encourage players to replace their Dragonflight Season 1 set with a new Season 2 set and are lowering the haste value from the Season 1 set. The new Season 2 set has introduced some interaction with Chain Lightning where the spell might be used even on single target encounters. So we're reducing the Season 2 set bonus interaction to keep Chain Lightning as a spell to only use when fighting multiple enemies. We're increasing the damage to your core melee attacks, which will boost your damage up to compensate for the tier set value adjustment and make your damage profile less reliant on Dragonflight set bonuses. The combination of all these changes should increase your single target damage slightly while keeping AoE roughly the same. Storm Strike and Wind Strike. Ascendant Storm Strike damage has been increased by 20% but will not apply in PvP. Lava Lash is getting a 20% damage buff but will not apply in PvP. Ice Strike is getting a 20% damage buff and will apply in PvP. Vault of the Incarnate 4-set bonus adjusted now grants 0.5% haste per Maelstrom weapon stack down from 1%. And Aberrus, the Shattered Crucible 4-set bonus has been adjusted. Next 2 Chain Lightning casts now deal 20% increased damage down from 100, and your mana regeneration in line with all the other hybrids, 100% from 150. For Resto Shamans, all spell and ability damage increased by 10%. Like to see that for Resto Shamans. And for Warlock, Nightmare has been redesigned. Now increases the amount of damage required to break your fear effects by 60%. I don't think it's going to work for Affliction. Make it viable, at least. Demon customizations are now available in the barber shop after learning the Grimoire, so you're going to get these customizable pets. And for Warrior, Prop Warrior, 6% damage increase overall. Interesting. Looks like they're adding an item skip. Players that have defeated Garrosh, Hellscream, and Siege Organ may now skip directly to the Inner Sanctum on all characters in the account by reading the scroll hanging on the wall near Lore Master Cho at the entrance. Developers note Siege Orgrimmar is a long and linear raid with a rare amount and plate shoulders held covetously by Garrosh Hellscream, its final boss encounter. We hope that the shortcut implemented here will allow players who've experienced this part of the story before to skip directly to the final showdown for a chance at earning those unique collectibles. Dude, I swear, are they watching my stream? Because I've been farming this thing every week and complaining about how annoying that raid is to run in through by myself. I'm definitely going to be going after the shoulders a little bit more after seeing this. So good direction overall for Death Knights. A lot of just overall tuning changes they're going to wait and see. It seems like they're kind of reining in Frost Mage a little bit, considering how strong it was likely going to be at the end of all of this. Still kind of wait and see to see if these numbers for Death Knight are going to be enough, and we still haven't seen too much for Outlaw. Those are the main things, or any sort of like crowd control for Affliction to try and help increase its viability for PvP, because I think this is the main thing that it is lacking, and I don't think this fear breaking thing is really going to be enough. But overall, it seems like they're trying to move away from things that players don't want in the game, like the Amulet, and make the classes more viable as soon as that has been removed with this update. So other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and it's got you up to date, and we will see you in the next one.